Americans of all stripes honored the late President George H.W. Bush today as his body lay in state at the U.S. Capitol. Ordinary citizens, former colleagues, and old rivals, including former Kansas Senator Bob Dole, paid their respects. Mr. Bush's service dog, Sully, also made an appearance. The public viewing ends Wednesday morning, to be followed by a state funeral at the National Cathedral. Meanwhile, President and Mrs. Trump visited the Bush family this afternoon at Blair House, across from the White House. We'll speak with some of those who knew President Bush best after the news summary. In the day's other news, a market meltdown hit Wall Street amid doubts about global growth and about an on-again, off-again trade truce with China. President Trump fueled the doubts with tweets that suggested there is no firm deal yet with Beijing. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lost nearly 800 points to close at 25,027. The Nasdaq fell 283 points, and the S&P 500 gave up 90. All three indexes were down more than 3%. The head of the CIA briefed U.S. Senate leaders today on the murder of Saudi Arabian journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Gina Haspel laid out the agency's findings behind closed doors. Afterwards, senators said they are even more convinced that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman was directly involved. Republican Lindsey Graham was one of the most vocal.
I want to make sure that Saudi Arabia is put on notice that business as usual has come to an end for me. I will not look at the kingdom the same way that I used to look at it. I will not support arms sales until all responsible for the death of Mr. Khashoggi have been brought to justice. I will no longer support the war in Yemen as constructed.
Last week, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said there is no direct link between the Crown Prince and the murder. President Trump has also played down the CIA findings. We'll take a closer look at all of this later in the program. A top American general told Congress today that the war in Afghanistan has reached a stalemate after 17 years. Marine Lieutenant General Kenneth McKenzie has been chosen to lead all U.S. forces in the Middle East. He told a Senate hearing that he does not know how long it will take to build up Afghan forces. He also warned against any major U.S. withdrawal in the meantime. In France, protesters vowed to keep up their fight despite a major government concession suspending fuel tax hikes for 6 months. The prime minister said the government of President Emmanuel Macron hopes to restore calm after the country's worst riots in 50 years.
Depuis plus de 3 semaines, des dizaines de milliers.
For more than 3 weeks, tens of thousands of French people have been expressing their anger in many French towns. This anger has deep roots. It's been brooding for a while. It often stayed quiet out of reticence or pride. Today it is being expressed with force and in a collective way. One has to be deaf or blind not to see or hear it.
Demonstrators responded by blocking roads around Paris and elsewhere for another day, and they demanded more concessions. The Israeli military today launched an operation to destroy tunnels dug from Lebanon into northern Israel. Officials released footage from one tunnel they said was dug by the militant group Hezbollah. Bulldozing and digging continued through the day on the Israeli side of the border. The United States formally served notice today that it will begin withdrawing from a nuclear arms treaty with Russia in 60 days. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said that a new Russian missile system violates the 1987 treaty. NATO ministers meeting in Brussels endorsed the U.S. position. Pompeo also called again for Moscow to release 24 Ukrainian sailors who were seized last month.
There is complete unanimity that the Russian action was lawless and unacceptable, and deterrence must be restored, and that is a collective commitment of Europe and the world to deny Russia the capacity to continue to violate basic international law norms.
Meanwhile, Ukraine said that shipping traffic has resumed to and from its ports in the Sea of Azov after last month's naval confrontation with Russian forces. Back in this country, President Trump's longtime advisor, Roger Stone, is refusing to talk to Senate Democrats or to share documents about the Russia investigation. Instead, he says he will invoke his Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination. His lawyer informed Senator Dianne Feinstein, who's the Judiciary Committee's ranking Democrat, in a Monday letter. Stone has denied knowing in advance that WikiLeaks would release Hillary Clinton's campaign emails in 2016. The National Republican Campaign Committee says that it was hit by an email hack during this year's election campaign. The intrusion began in April and accessed email accounts of 4 top aides. The NRCC coordinates Republican campaigns for the U.S. House of Representatives. And authorities in North Carolina, have lowered the death toll in that California, have lowered the death toll in that huge wildfire last month. They say that DNA testing confirms 85 people died in the town of Paradise and surrounding areas. That's down from 88. The number of missing was also reduced to 11. It had been nearly 1,300 just days after the fire struck. Still to come on the NewsHour, the American people pay respect to the 41st president at the U.S. Capitol. Senators openly blame the Saudi crown prince for the murder of a journalist. Controversy surrounds an effort by outgoing Wisconsin Republicans to limit the power of newly elected Democrats, and much more.